The story of the missing Chiong sisters, Mari Joy and Jacqueline Part 2. The Chiong Sister case has a strange turn of events. Rusia had accurately testified of where the body had been dumped, how the sisters had been restrained, and where the pair were abducted from. He also went as far as admitting he had joined in with the rape of the sisters, but did not take a part in the murder. Despite his sickening recount of the events of that evening, the public still saw Rusia as a hero. He was even granted freedom while the rest of the 6 remained imprisoned. Mrs. Chi-ong went as far as bringing gifts to Rusia after the testimony, which seemed like a highly unusual gesture to some, as he had just admitted to being a part of the abduction, rape, and murder of her daughters. Despite the unusual behavior surrounding the case, many in the public maintained a positive view towards Rusia, though this was likely linked to many irrelevant factors. Rusia had lived in the United States, so he was very articulate, with a strong command of the English language. Many also found him attractive, which also began to sway public opinion. Why did he come forward? Was it because the police offered him immunity, which allowed him to openly tell the story? Or was Rusia forced into his testimony due to some form of manipulation? Many supporters of the convicted continued to point to inconsistencies in Rusia's testimony, while Paco and Jasmine continued to maintain that they did not know Rusia prior to their conviction. It had come out that Rusia had a prior criminal conviction which should have eliminated him from being a witness in the case, but his testimony was upheld. Rusia also admitted having been tortured by the police. Other detainees within the prison said they had witnessed his torture. But this still changed very little, as there were other witnesses who made statements backing parts of Rusia's original testimony. It was later revealed that all the witnesses used by the prosecution had been paid, which raises some very big question about the validity of the entire case. Alternative theories continue to arise. The next theory will be based on the corrupt political landscape rife across Cebu at the time. Dionisio Chiong was allegedly working for the controversial Cebu businessman Peter Lim, who has been repeatedly accused of being a prominent drug lord in the region. Mr. Chiong had controlled many drug operations through Mr. Lim's trucking business, although Mr. Chiong was fired from this position. Before the sisters went missing, Mr. Chiong was supposed to act as a witness in a drug case against his former employer. After the daughters went missing, he refused to witness against the unnamed drug lord. It was even alleged that the group of police who arrested Paco were also employed by Peter Lim as bodyguards. So, were Dionisio's daughters' lives used as a form of threat against him? Did this whole case stem from Peter Lim acting to maintain his freedom? Some more extreme claims have been made that the sisters may still be alive. Social media detectives have allegedly found pictures of individuals who resemble the missing sisters, although these claims contain very little solid evidence. More holes found in the Chiong case. The family and lawyers of Paco could prove that he was in school taking a test on the 16th of July in Manila. He didn't travel back to Cebu until the 17th of July, arriving in the evening. Some teachers and students were willing to take the stand as witnesses. There was even a picture of Paco with his friends going for drinks on the 16th of July, where his friend can confirm they stayed up the whole night drinking. As mentioned earlier, the defense thought this was their key to freedom from the charges, although this confidence later proved to be futile. In the Philippines, there is no jury. The judge decides the outcome of every case. Unfortunately, The strange behavior continued with the Judge Martin Ocampo. This hindered this evidence, which favored the case of the accused. The judge gave very little attention to case details, even dosing off at some points. He even went as answering question on behalf of Rusia when Rusia was being cross-examined. The judge, in this case, did not let the school witnesses take the stand, despite many of them being willing to testify in defense of Paco's claims. Mrs. Chi-ong also had power and awarded the policeman who sought justice for her daughter. Cheryl Jimenia, Mrs. Chiong Sister, worked for and was close to the president, Joseph Estrada. At this point, the president got involved and pushed for the case by adding more investigators. More details of the key witness we spoke about earlier, Davidson Rusia, began to emerge. This just added to the growing pile of shady behavior surrounding the case. 2 years later, the judge issued the verdict that the 7 boys were guilty and sentenced them to death. The 6 went to jail, but Rusia was set free. Mrs. Chi-ong went ahead to fight for a death row seat, but it was not granted. The news reported that a hotel worker found the judge dead in his hotel room. The death was ruled a suicide. Years later, the justice system changed its verdict to sentence the boy to death row in February 2004. The Spanish government and the UN intervened after Paco's family pleaded for their help. The Philippine government abolished the death sentence in 2006. In October 2009, Paco was transferred to Spain to serve the rest of his sentence. He still applies for parole, but he will be 61 by the time he completes his sentence. The other 5 were left to serve their sentences in the Philippines. Feldon approved the parole of 4 of the guys, but he was later asked to step down by President Rodrigo Duterte. The Chiong family thanked the president, and the convicts were taken back to prison. Now that you have the case summary, what are your views on the case? Do you think the guys were guilty, or did the justice system let them down?